Hey, I got some news. Jackie called earlier. She says that the internal website that handles the payroll system is vulnerable to SQL injection. Can you believe it? Was that? You don't know what SQL injection is? No worries. Let's go through the concept of SQL injection in this video. In the next video, I'll demo it for you in the lab environment. You know what's interesting? When most people think about a site getting hacked, they probably picture somebody wearing a hoodie in a tech bunker in their mother's garage, typing very fast on a keyboard, right? And they're hitting a huge number of websites at once. Well, that's not the case. You don't need to be doing all that stuff to hack a website. What if I told you just by adding some symbols at the end of a website URL and by running some scans, that can do the trick. This can all be done by an attack called SQL injection, also called SQLi. So what is SQL injection? As you know, SQL is a database. When it pertains to a website, it is a type of database that supports the website. For example, you log on to your banking website and you enter your name and your password. Well, that input will travel from the website to a database on the back end. The database stores your username and password and other pertinent information about you and your account, such as your address, your account number, your $1 million that you have sitting in your checking account, stuff like that, right? SQL injection, also known as SQLi, is a typical attack vector that utilizes malicious SQL code against the database. These codes are usually entered through a user input field, like your username field or your password field, or even the URL field in your web browser. SQL injection most of the time is hunting for data. Examples of data being hunted include sensitive information, maybe client records, passwords, credit card information, and things like that. Here is a SQL statement. This essentially sits in the SQL database. Notice the single quote in this SQL query. This indicates the beginning and the end of a string. A string, by the way, is the part of the code that represents a text value. This is where you as the user will enter the text value in the field that is usually saying, hey, put your username and put your password here. Now, once I enter my username, Paul, and my password is awesome, notice the statement that is going to be ran against the database. You notice Paul is now in place of the string to enter username, and is awesome is entered in the string for password. It's important that you know some SQL syntax. For instance, a single quotation mark represents the start and the close of a string. If you see or, it means that we can create a secondary condition. And if you see the pound sign, it means that everything after this symbol is a comment and should not be considered a statement. And 1 equals 1 is a true statement. So anytime a SQL database sees this, it will assume that whatever statement you've made is a true condition. Take a few minutes to kind of study this and digest it for a second. It will be important to know them as we move forward. So when I do my SQL injection, my username can be Paul, and my password would be single quotation or 1 equals 1. On the back end, when I input this, it's going to be shown as this. My username is Paul, which is fine, but the password, now on the back end, it has a single quotation representing the input of a user string. But I have manipulated that with my single quotation to close the string. So essentially, password equals star string is a blank and a star string. This is a false statement. I put the or command to say or 1 equals 1, which is a true statement. And then on the back end, you can see in black is the single quotation to close the string. The intent of the database is to enter your password between the two black single quotation mark. However, by injecting other quotation mark, I've manipulated this command to say something different. So now the resultant statement is a single quote and another single quote to close my command, meaning this is now a blank. My password equals nothing, which is false, or 1 equals 1, which is true. Now, the password is false or true. And whenever you have a false or true, the result must be true. At least that's how the SQL database sees it. and therefore you are allowed access into the web application. There are other commands that you can inject into a SQL statement in order to detect if the SQL database is vulnerable. For example, if you enter just in single quotation, of course the password is not true, but the error that you receive will reveal that the SQL is vulnerable. And from there you can go on to commit more injection scripts. Here's another useful one that you can enter. So it's a single quotation to close out a string. You enter the letter A, and A is being compared to a true statement. You see the dash dash here. This also has the same meaning as a pound sign, meaning comment everything after this. So the last single quotation is not being considered. And so forth and so on. I recommend you visit the OWASP webpage to get a listing of all the SQL commands that can be entered. In the next video, we're going to review the different types of SQL commands.